Вітаю всіх першої нових учасників цієї програми «Войни Україну». Вітаю так само щиро і тих, що з ностальгії повертають. Зв'язно вітаю і дякую нашим музикантам. Я думаю, то все варто почати, часувати, вчити, знаєте, якоїсь культурної маленької події, це для натхнення. Піднести трохи наші такі прості вещі. А ці наші чудові музиканти зроблять це. Нам теж треба натхнення на те, що ми робимо, те, що ми робимо. Дякую. Я вам дуже дякую і хочу тільки передати, що нам якраз найкраще, найлегше інтегруватися в світ через культуру. У нас на широкому фронті культури є виняткові люди. Це музики часто, це в опері, це в образотворчих мистецтвах, це в балеті. І справді тоді, як ми зможемо відкрити двері світ через музику, легше не приходити з нашою економікою і в житті політичному. But I guess the ambassador of Switzerland has arrived. Beyond welcome. Great to have you. Well, I guess. Yeah. You're here. Yeah, sure. Well, I'll present our speakers' guests first briefly, and then I'll talk to the theme, really, of our working conference. It is really the way how will we transform Ukraine. Ambassador Schröder, fairly recent ambassador from Switzerland, is really a wonderful person. He's very warm, very enthusiastic, very dynamic, very high energy level. And even the first encounter with him was a very great pleasure, because when we started, and I started discussing this program, Young Generation Will Change Ukraine, he immediately understood not only the purpose, but the way in which we'll do it, and offered to help in any way he can. And he's doing it. So thank you very much, Bjorn. And I wish all the ambassadors, but fortunately we do have ambassadors of these other countries that we are exploring that are also very supportive of our program. Michelle Tereshchenko, and I shift to English so that you can warm up, because our proceedings will continue in English. Michelle Tereshchenko is from that very famous family of Tereshchenkos. Wonderful businessman and very great philanthropist. Actually, it is wonderful that it is precisely the businessman that did a lot in culture, building wonderful buildings, creating museums, etc. And Michel has returned. It's after a few generations that were involved. And I still remember how his father came to me to Geneva in '89 to find out whether it might be interesting, for his son at least, to visit Ukraine again. And Michel somehow listened to the suggestions of his father and did return. He returned, and in a way it is to say, resuscitate, rebuild, regenerate the roots that he comes from. And I think this is really wonderful, because it's a man of another culture, from a completely different world, has come here, but he's come here not to observe, he's come to work. And he created already one of these, I would say, islands of good functioning, good performance, good as a mayor, but also as actually sort of a businessman, combining the two in a perfectly honest way, trying in fact to purify the city, and through that partly demolish Sumy. So we are really delighted to have him with us, because he has returned not as we play bloody sin. No, he returned very, very, as always belonged, even though some of his life he did not realize it very, very ill. So thank you very much. And I say he's really an example to a lot of people, and will continue to be. Now, Ukraine is still in a mess. It's a very bad political situation, economic situation, social and ecological, on both fronts. We are in a very bad condition. Yet, we all know that the potential of the country is very great. What is more important, potential is great because we have all the resources. We have a lot of people, particularly young people, that manage to get a good education, that are honest people, that are patriotic people, that want to do something for the country. So there is a potential. And in fact, there is some progress that has been made by Ukraine in actually already during the last 2 years. I mentioned just a few examples. First, there is this program of deregulation. Now, how did it start? Over 1,000 of graduates of Western universities, better Western universities, decided somehow spontaneously to return to Ukraine 2.5 years ago. Now, why did they return to Ukraine? They could have had nice positions in the countries where they completed their studies. They could have had nice studies, nice salaries on it. They returned for just one reason. They wanted to do something for the country. They gained some knowledge, some new competences, and they simply offered themselves to the country. Well, whatever we can do, we'll do, realizing that they'll be getting, if they'll get salaries, actually they'll be really pitiful salaries, but that was their motive. Their motive is to do something for the country. I would say this is the tradition of Maidan, or the revolution of dignity, where people actually simply wanted to do something for the country, not just in these services that were established when people started getting hurt, better than others, but also these first volunteers that went out to the east, out of a sense of obligation to the country. They're not told to go there, they're not paid to risk their lives, risk their health at any rate, but they went. So we have, if you like, we have people who have demonstrated that they are real patriots, that they want to do something for the country. So we have somebody in that sense to follow. Now, one of the things that these returnees have done, they created, at least 3 of them to start with, created a program called deregulation. They realized that rather than setting up yet another agency to fight corruption, petty corruption, I mean, they decided on this deregulation program, worked it out in a very, very detailed way. And I know that the head of it happens to be from Odessa, that much ago, plus 2 of his colleagues. He's a graduate of Harvard Medical School, by the way. They worked it out in detail, explained it to me. I thought it was great. I started blowing their horn, and the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Economics and Trade, actually invited that Pashko listened to that program and said immediately, you be the first deputy of the ministry. And he said, no, I don't want to work for the government. It's not easy to work for the government. But we'll do voluntarily whatever we can. And thus, this program started. Now, the program is simply this. We have a tremendous number of different kind of agencies, different regulations that require some kind of permit for this, for that, or inspection of this or that, etc. And every time somebody had to go to one of these places, he had to be paid bribe in order to get his piece of paper. Now this was petty corruption, very widespread petty. Now these 3 men actually expanded into 28, a group of 28, and they called themselves Easy Business. And Easy Business, well, resulted in fact that one can now register a business in one day, in one place, in one day. Now, they published a report last July about the previous year and stated that exactly each month what regulation did they manage to cancel, and therefore which places of corruption they simply uprooted. They did not exist. So that was one of these things that I consider progress. A much bigger progress was made by Ukraine shifting to, that is, the government shifting to electronic purchasing of goods and services that they need. Because up to, say, a year ago still, what would happen that the government would publish what it is they needed. Yes, I think I got some money on my mobile, thank you. The government would publish what they needed, and a number of companies would get together, discuss with themselves, and would make offers of goods and services, but offers that were, let's say, at prices that were probably 3 times, sometimes higher than the cost of production. And then, of course, money was paid for that in cash to these different enterprises. And the difference between actually what the real prices should have been and that kind of additional sums were split evenly between the higher officials from the government and the companies. Now this was the source of enormous corruption, of big-scale corruption. Billions of hryvnias were lost that way. In fact, in some years, one could talk about billions of dollars that were lost that year. It was huge corruption. Now, not only 3 young people worked out the program, how to actually shift to electronic purchases. They developed it so well, and they implemented it by now. Of course, it is implemented through the government. And when I say young people, because actually the oldest, they're 27 years of age, and the oldest, who is not even a deputy minister. He works as an assistant to a deputy minister. And they came up with such a good program that actually it won the prize in London of the best purchasing program that exists. It's kind of almost surprising, but very, very satisfying or rewarding to know that Germany has asked if the people that developed our email purchasing program actually could not upgrade the one that they have in Germany. They do have this kind of program, e-purchasing, but there's not quite as good as ours. So this is another significant step forward. I consider the biggest step forward, the biggest progress, the fact that we have a new cabinet of ministers. And I think for the first time, we have somebody there as Prime Minister who can be considered as a person really with 3 characteristics. Patriotic, that is, he will focus just on what society needs and trying to improve the welfare of the society, the well-being of the society, for the country, for the state. Secondly, he's competent, and he demonstrated it very well when he was in Vinnytsia. And as you all know, Vinnytsia was the most progressive oblast, first the city, and then oblast, among all oblasts in Ukraine. So he demonstrated the competence of managing things already then. And thirdly, he's correct rather than corrupt. Because the tragedy of Ukraine was that it is such a bad state because we did not have people in top positions, at least in Ukraine, in 3 branches of government. The people that would be precisely patriotic would have no other priorities or activities but doing what
necessary for the country. Secondly, competent. And thirdly, correct rather than corrupt. Not a single person in these top positions under the current Prime Minister can actually match or have these three characteristics. So the governance was very poor because of that reason. It was the wrong people that were at the head of the three branches of the government. And now actually we have at least one that is really in that category. And a number of people in the cabinet that actually are also in that category. The question, however, the issue of, since we are making some progress, is it necessary for us to work and think and then do the transformation of Ukraine? Yes, it is very necessary because we still are in a poor shape. We still need a lot of changes. We still talk a lot about reforms, but they're progressing very, very slowly. So some even actually in the economy will start moving a little bit up, actually already at the end of this year, next year a little bit better. But it will be really just a very slow progress, quite inadequate. And now, so it is still very necessary actually to work on this transformation of Ukraine, young generation change Ukraine. But it is easier to do it now. It will be easier to do it now. It will be easier precisely because it's not only you, the participants in this program, that are take part in this process of transformation. Precisely because there are a lot of other, particularly young people, that will join that process. When I mentioned these 1,000 students have returned voluntarily, not all of them are members of this program, but the key members, by the way, of that group, and particularly Pascal and his closest colleagues, actually are part of the program, so they share with their colleagues actually how it works, etc. But we have people in the parliament, particularly the young and particularly the women, that actually are again fully patriotic, they're competent, and they're correct. So you see, it was not only us, you, that will be carrying that burden of the transformation. There will be several thousand other people that will join readily. I could be very specific about it. If Minister of the Cabinet Minister, he is only 32, yet we know from practice reality, it's an extremely important ministry. It's not really a service ministry as it sounds, because actually it is that ministry that set the agenda for the government meetings, etc. So I mention him just as one of the examples that it would be very surprising if a man like that, who is patriotic also and competent and not corrupt, would not be joining this process of transformation process, and either just remain that minister that he now is, rather than somebody new becoming that, or perhaps even occupying a greater post. So I just wanted to reiterate, the need for transformation is there. We made some progress, but things are moving too slowly, so transformation is utterly necessary, and it is becoming easier because we know now, and we're kind of quietly mobilizing these other people in order to join that process so that we can do it better, faster, more effectively. Now, I mentioned that we have these two personalities, both happen to be, and I'm very proud of it, good friends, and perhaps I could ask the ambassador to say a few words to us, to these young people, whose eyes are shining, and that itself is a proof of the fact that they are dedicated to a great mission.
delighted to be here. I know it's a Saturday morning, but nevertheless, I'm very happy to be among friends, to recognize some known faces among you, and that's always a good feeling to be with the Modern Abolition Foundation. You said a very few kind words about me, and it's not to return the compliment, just to explain. I don't know if they are all deserved, but you are a very contagious, positively contagious person, and when you mentioned that I might be warm and active, or a few other positive adjectives, it's just the reflection of your own warmth and activity, and it's always nice to be with you. So thank you very much. I'm also very happy to be with the mayor, with Michel. I had the chance to meet him already once, and it's interesting also, not only because of his position, and I always believe that local changes are very important, but it's also an interesting story, and I have to speak about my mother. Because she's a fan of Michel. She never met him, but she was in my little city in Switzerland and at a hairdresser and reading some magazines, and then she read something. Of course, every time she sees something about Ukraine, she reads it, and very often she's a little bit sad or anxious about my own safety. You know how people amalgamate. There's a war in the country, and they, of course, mothers are thinking that I'm in the middle of the war, not realizing that I am very far away. But what I'm trying to say is, it was a very positive story, you know, about Michel, the transformation, somebody coming from this background and from France and going to this village and municipality. And so there are too few articles, positive articles, and I think it's important for Ukraine to manage also to change the stories and to have positive narratives in the French industries, in the Swedish, in the Austrian, in the German, American newspapers around the world, and I think Michel has already managed to change very often the narrative into very positive stories across the media landscape in Europe. But I was asked to speak a little bit about the Swiss experience on the transformation of Ukraine, or for the transformation of Ukraine, and of course the desire of the foundations are border to me, so I will try, and I apologize, I have to read a little bit the text, but as always, feel free to, and I mean it, to interrupt me and try to attract my attention and ask a question, or if I am not clear enough to ask for some kind of precision. Yes, maybe it's easier for you to, if it's convenient. Is the mic also there? Yes. So I can give you the... Thank you. Shall we speak? I still need a mic, I think. Yes. So I was asked to speak about the transformation of Ukraine and some lessons learned that might be useful, Swiss experience that might be useful for Ukraine. Few of you have already been to Switzerland. I will be very happy to have this exchange with you during the coffee break, and I already apologize in advance, but as I mentioned, I have to leave after the coffee break. I have another function at around noon, 12:30 in town. But so for those of you that have been to Switzerland, I hope I will not be too boring, and I hope I can be a little bit of interest for those of you that doesn't know too much about my country. It's a little bit a boring country because Switzerland is a very stable country. We had the same constitution for over the last 120 years. We changed a little bit about 20 years ago, but it was more, not cosmetic transformation, but a little bit of not too important changes. So we had no civil war since 1840. So basically a little bit stable, or very much stable, a little bit boring. But what are the reasons for this stability? And I think we should not be too modest and too shy, but at the same time, it's a lot of luck. Switzerland has been a lucky country, and also a few good political decisions and good politicians. So I will just try to bring you a few of those. The luck is subjective and it's something you cannot really influence, but the main reasons, nevertheless, of this stability, I think, has to go back to a very decentralized political system. And of course, if you speak with a Swiss person, decentralization will always come. Federalism, decentralization, you can call it as you like, or as it fits politically in a given political context, but this idea that the center should not have all the power, that one person or one institution should not have all the power, is very central in Switzerland. So we have break down the power to three levels: the national level, the Swiss Confederation, the cantonal level, to the 26 states, or they are called states, cantons, and to the over 2,000 municipalities we have in Switzerland. Each of these levels has the same, basically, executive, legislative, and judiciary competences, so they are equals, and the idea is also that it's a system, a bottom-up system, that the municipalities will give some competence to the cantons, and the cantons will agree collectively to give competences of their own to the state. So it's not the state, it's not the Swiss Confederation that agreed to be very generous and to give a little bit of power to the region and to the municipalities. It's the opposite. You, as a private person, you agree to give a little bit of competence to somebody else or to the higher level. This is what we call the principle also of subsidiarity, which is very important. What are the main competences that remain at the national level? It's foreign policy. I am not the ambassador of Neuchâtel or of Zurich or Geneva. I am the representative of Switzerland. So foreign policy is, of course, a very important competence, but also security policy, customs, monetary system, and a few other things. But those are the main competences. So you can see a lot of competences remain at the cantonal level, the oblast level. And those 26 cantons, you look at Switzerland, it's very tiny, and you compare it to Ukraine, it's even more tiny. So nevertheless, this very tiny place is break down into 26 absolutely equal entities. And they have, at worldwide, the highest level of competencies. Among other, education, health, culture, and police, which are, if you think about yourself or for your children and your parents, those are elements where you believe that it's important that you can decide as much as possible close to where you live. Foreign policy doesn't really matter to you if you live in Kiev or in Odessa or in Kharkiv. You know, foreign policy is foreign policies far away from you, but education, health system, police, this is central to where you live, and therefore it has remained at this cantonal level. Municipalities, it's also important. We have over 2,000 municipalities. But here we witness a new phenomenon that has started already 20 years ago. And I just would like to go a little bit into the details of this, because as I mentioned, we have a very federal system. But at the same time, we recognize that maybe we have been a little bit too far, or that basically modern globalized world require a little bit more centralization. So we have very small municipalities with sometimes 500 people, inhabitants, 300 inhabitants. And because of the system, each municipality needs to have a legislative and executive system. And if you need a legislative and an executive system for 200 people or 500 people, it's a lot of money that is put and time and energy that is put at a very micro level. So some of those municipalities now are in the process of what we call amalgamation, fusion, thinking we are maybe a little bit too small in this modern world, and this neighbor, okay, we have been a little bit distant to them for the last centuries, but now it's maybe time, because it's easy also to travel, it's easy to communicate, to get closer. So what we witness very much now is a reduction, a strong reduction in the number of municipalities. Municipalities agreeing to get together, to go either to a stronger center, and we have next weekend in my own city of Neuchâtel a big vote on a big fusion where 6-7 smaller municipalities will agree to join basically Neuchâtel as a new center. But sometimes you have also equal municipalities together deciding, this is no reasons to be separated now, and we will amalgamate. So you witness the same process as you have a little bit in Ukraine. The chances, again, and this is luck, it is an exercise that we have no time pressure. The process in some cases will take, or has already taken, more than 10 years. It's a very participative system where we basically really go into every municipality and we ask the citizens, to give the impulse and to really be part of the process. So it's a very long process, and we are very lucky to have the time on our side. The Swiss don't have only the watches, we also sometimes have the time on our side, and we are not too stressed. Now, also an important aspect of this subsidiarity principle is the fact that the legitimacy of the authorities is very strong, but also the accountability. The person that will take the decision to spend money from the budget is basically always somehow your neighbor. And this leads to less corruption. Because the people, they realize that, they cannot do anything, that because the citizens that they are accountable to are very close to them, they feel a little bit more, there are other reasons, but they feel a little bit more inclined not to be corrupted. I'm not saying there is no corruption in Switzerland. I think this is something I also have to be crystal clear. Corruption is in any country, anytime, everywhere. The matter is how much corruption you have, and more importantly, what is the sanctions in case you are caught being corrupted. And probably one of the problems in Ukraine, it has been over the years this culture of impunity for corrupted officials, and this is definitely something Ukraine has to work on. In Switzerland we have corruption, but we have cases of corrupted officials that are in jail, and impunity is important, or the absence of impunity is important. Now, another aspect, I mentioned federalism and decentralization. A very important aspect is also solidarity, because all those 26 states are not equal. The cantons of Zurich or Geneva, it's very known to Borden, are very rich cantons. And if you have been traveling to Switzerland, you will see you have some very rich cantons, Zurich and Geneva, and a few others. But you have also poor cantons. And it's very important that you have a solidarity system between those cantons. It doesn't mean that the rich have to give everything to the poor. It doesn't work this way. But solidarity, nevertheless, and good mechanisms are important. And here, the national level can also influence through infrastructure projects and other ways this system of solidarity, and we do have a very good financial compensation mechanism that is also agreed by everyone. So it's not something that is imposed by someone to the rich and to the benefit of the poor, but it's a system that has been negotiated and discussed. This leads to a stronger cohesion. You mentioned patriotism. You cannot have patriotism if you have very rich and very poor in the same place. Everyone should feel a reason to be part of this bigger part. And this system is called solidarity. This also enables us to maintain diversity. Unity is good, but you cannot be all the same. So maintaining the capacity for certain regions to have their own diversity, their own identity is important. In Switzerland it's important because we have 4 languages. Again, this tiny place was able to maintain 4 languages. But it goes much beyond the language. It's religion as well, and it's also just local customs and habits. So we have maintained homogeneity, unity, and yet diversity. Let me just go to a few more points, and I just hope I'm not too long, but tell me if I am overstepping my time, because I think the next speaker is more important than the Swiss example. Or as important, okay, as important. Thank you. It's minority. It goes with this respect for diversity. In Switzerland we have many minorities, and we are always somehow a minority in one way or the other. And what we have created in Switzerland is an over-protection, over-respect for minority. And this is very important. Next weekend we have, and I just make a little bit something outside my text, but minority is not only religious or languages or anything else. It's also about who you are. For instance, gay, lesbian, LGTB. Next weekend, next Sunday, we have a gay pride. And this is also a minority. And this also deserves an overprotection at this time. So it's every kind of person that is not mainstream is important. And this overprotection of minority in Switzerland is very well taken care of, and I think this is also one of the recipes why it is working in Switzerland. One of the last points is this idea of consensus. Sometimes in Switzerland it's a little bit pushed too far, because we have sometimes a difficulty to take decisions, because we have this strong willingness to consult and to create an ownership of everybody. No one should be left alone. No one should feel that a decision has been imposed upon him or her. So to do that, you need a long consultations. At one point, we hope that a common own solution will drop out of this consultation system. Again, it's the luxury of time, but this idea of taking care of consensus so that everyone feel ownership about the decision is very important. Now, how do we do that as well? It's the very direct democracy we have in Switzerland. This is quite unique, and this is something very fewer countries have. Some countries are trying to bring elements of direct democracy because they were too far away from the citizens. France has elements of direct democracy when they have a referendum system. The Netherlands very recently showed us also an example of direct democracy with the Dutch infamous Dutch referendum. The problem of those elements of direct democracy, when they are coming once every 25 years, and I speak also with the French Michel, but if the topic asked or the question asked is completely irrelevant to the citizens. What they would like is to express something against or for the government at that moment. So the question asked is not anymore relevant, it's more a way to express frustration, anger, or anything else but a wise and rational response. It's not the same in Switzerland, because we go every 3 months on Sundays to vote. So direct democracy for us is not at all a way to express anger or frustration against the government, because then we will be always angry or frustrated every 3 months. So when we go to vote, we really vote on the question asked and not on anything else. And that's also something very important. And also might be a lesson to Ukraine. There are discussions to bring elements of direct democracy in Ukraine. Certainly good, but it has to be something which has a real meaning and not done all of a sudden as a way to, for the president or the government to find support for himself or herself. Yes, I think I depart a little bit from my text, but the time is not too bad, and I see a board willing to step in. Thank you very much for your attention.
I just wanted to mention about an event that occurred just a few days ago, and it will also show how actually the will of the people is exercised. They opened the longest tunnel in the world. It is 57 kilometers long. There are actually 3 tunnels, because there's 1 tunnel going in one direction for the trains, both passenger and transport of goods. And that 1 tunnel going in the opposite direction, and the 3rd tunnel is in case something happens in these other tunnels for the passengers to be able to escape safely. Now, it took 17 years to do it. It was work 24 hours a day, every day for 17 years. It cost 11.5 billion euro. Now, the interesting thing about it, of course, what are the benefits? They shortened the time that it takes to go from Zurich, say, to Milan, from 4 hours to 2 hours. But it's much more important, because there's a plan that actually there are the rapid trains, and they'll go from Holland up to Milan at 250 kilometers. And there will be, when actually this tunnel is tested properly, it will come, I guess, in December of this year, where there will be over 60 trains actually going through the tunnel every 24 hours, in both directions, carrying people, carrying goods. And the trains will be crossing that tunnel by the rate of 57 kilometers in 20 minutes. So there will be another great advantage, because there will be much less traffic of big trucks that are carrying goods on the superhighways, which means much easier on the environment. So it's killing several birds with one single stone. But if you like, the cherry of it all is that it was actually done, it was the people who decided to do it. There was a referendum to do it. And you would think that again, people thinking you would pay 11.5 million euros to do it, just to make it a bit easier for these Germans or others to travel faster. You know, you think they would not do it, yet they actually voted for it. So I wanted to mention this very recent example, actually, that when the referenda are made frequently on specific issues, people actually, and by the way, you know, the government provides very good argument, or if it is an initiative, people actually that want a referendum, you know, they actually provide the arguments why they want it, and the government provides the explanation why perhaps it should not be done. But in this case, actually, the government was for it, and the people voted for it, and it's fantastic that they could be so long-sighted, which means that people become very wise politically. They do make the right decisions, even though sometimes it can be very costly decisions. So I just wanted to mention that because it was a great celebration. When Anne was there, Angela was there. It was a great celebration for European leaders and not just for Switzerland. Thank you very much. I'll ask now Michel to address you. And Michel, by the way, I was very, very happy to see that a recent book has appeared, La guerre hybride en Ukraine, by a French author. Very knowledgeable. He really spent a lot of time to understand fully the situation here. So we are sometimes worried that the population in France did not really understand enough the situation in Ukraine, this Russian aggression, etc. It's done. You'll do the rest. Thank you.
My dear friends, first I have to tell you that listening to the Swiss ambassador, I was dreaming that one day we could twin Neuchâtel or the nice city where your mother is living with Brooke. And it's such a pleasure to see how the society could be harmonious, could be respectful, and I really hope that one day also it will happen in our Ukraine. We are still a little far from this possibility, and I think it will take a little bit of time because we cannot, we can organize in Lviv successful or joyful gay pride. It will take some time, but we are going this way. And also, I'd like to tell you that yesterday in Lviv, maybe preparing the European Championship of football, I got a little accident on the foot, and the chief doctor told me, you have to stay 3 days lying on the bed, don't even hope to do anything else this weekend. And I say it's not possible, because tomorrow I have a very important appointment. Tomorrow my friend Bogdan Gabrielishkin asked me to be a speaker to his conference, and with young Ukrainians listening. And this is for me a very, very important moment and a big honor to be invited today. I thank you very much. In fact, I've been, Bogdan, you were one of the first people I met in Ukraine. It was in 2003 or 2004. And I listened to you, and for the following 12 or 13 years since that time, I have listened only to people saying always the same thing. Your optimism, your direction, your hope for a free and pretty Ukraine was always for me like a guideline. And also there is another people that say always the same thing. It's the Ukrainian people. I've been watching like a tourist all the elections, all the Maidan, all the talk shows, all the demonstrations. And I was surprised to see that each time the people is consulted, they say the same thing. They say we want to live in a free country with dignity. We want to get rid of bandits. Would that be Russian bandits or Ukrainian bandits? We want to be able to to build our family life, and we want to be able to give perspective to our children, and we want to have the right to be patriotic, to form our nation. It's very simple. In a word, to resume it, I can read that in the Constitution of the United States of America, everyone is entitled to its pursuit of happiness. And very unfortunately, when on the 12 years that I've been like a tourist, living, working, traveling in Ukraine, I saw that it was not possible for Ukrainians to follow its pursuit of happiness, and even less for the people in Lviv. And then came Maidan. And I think we have to be all and forever very, very, very proud of what happened in Maidan. Now sure, it ended tragically, but it was a fantastic demonstration. And even this tragic end, we should not be ashamed of it, because it was a fantastic demonstration to the world of what really the Ukrainian people want. And after Maidan, I was convinced that everything will be better. I was convinced that very soon people gave their life, but very soon they will get the results for which they gave their life. And I went back to Lviv, hoping that here also we will see some changes. Well, come the election after Maidan, presidential election, all the people vast majority, 2/3 of the people in Lviv voted for Żydzi Pan. They were willing to open a new life. They were patriotic. Even very, very close to the border with Russia, the city was covered with blue and yellow flags. I said, that's a good sign. And then came, a few months later, the parliamentary election. And then our deputy, which was one of the people signing the dictatorial laws of the 16th of January 2014, changed his step. No, before it was pro-Kushma, then it was pro-Yushchenko, then it was pro-Yanukovych, and this time he said he will be pro-Poroshenko. And he got elected, because there was no choice. And then our chief of rayon, who spent his time and energy and the money of the city to spend Titushki to anti-Maidan all the time, who felt one of the 30 chief of rayons that felt under illustration by the president's order. Then the new deputy, which was the old one, said, oh, there was some mistake, this guy is not so bad, let's get him back. And again, he went back chief of rayon. So the changes did not happen. Same deputy, same chief of rayon. And the war in Lviv meant basically the stop of all activities. On the last 16 years, the city had lost more than 10,000 working places. And it was a result of corruption, mismanagement, and it was also the reason was also that for the people in power, around this deputy, whose name is Andrei Derkach, I will not hide it, you know him. For the people in power, it was better to have people poor and without jobs than to have people enjoying a pretty life. It will cost less to buy everything and to get administrative resources for itself. So the war not only was a trauma for all families. In Lviv, we have a lot of families which are split between the border. And we have a lot of people that were working in Russia, coming back on the weekend. And we have a few Russian tourists also. So not only it was a trauma because of the war, the mobilization, but also it was the end of all economic activities. The very last kilorama or small plants that were still working in Lviv were working for Russian oil. And then it stopped. Basically, there was no more business. The city fully died. And the only way to make money and to have a perspective in Lviv were contraband or customs. Except this, there was no more possibility. On my side, for the last 12 years, I started my little business because my family house in Lviv had become the Institute of Flax and Hemp. And I was so pleased when I came back in 2002 for the first time to see that they remembered of what the family did. So I tried to help this institute. The situation was difficult for the institute because it was the Soviet Institute for Flax and Hemp. And after 91, all the fields of hemp were in Russia, all the fields of flax were in Belarus, but the institute stayed in Ukraine, not 10 kilometers from the border. And 135 people, fantastic, very, very highly estimated people, very crafted people, Dr. Nauk, stayed without any job, without any client. And I tried to help this institute, so I think it would be, we started to bring the French people there, the French Federation for Hemp, for flax, and to start some good cooperation. In fact, the French, since 2003, the French are selling Ukrainian flax in France and paying royalty. Is one of the few examples of the Western people buying Ukrainian technology and paying royalty for it in the seed business. But my business developed a little bit, and I started, I saw that to help the institute, someone has to seed the flax and hemp, so they can make the seeding material. So nobody was willing to do it, so I entered some fields, and I started to seed flax and hemp. And it happened to be very, very good business to develop, not huge business, but 153 people are working in the fields, in the plant. I bought the plant from the Metallalon. It was a very old Penkoza road that was built in 1926 and never remonted since. So basically, with a small investment, very reasonable investment, I'm not a rich people, with an investment very reasonable, we managed to do our business going. So after my time, I looked at the situation. My little investment, not very, not high tech, was developing. 153 people get reasonable salary every month. Everything official, everything clean, good atmosphere, and export for the country. We sell 99% to export. And in parallel, everything died. Everything. They closed not only the 4 big plants that were working in the past for assembly, but they also closed the Miasa Combinat, the milk factory, the very good factory that was producing cider and apple juice. They closed the Sukona Fabrika, everything. They even closed the bakery. The Klebsabot was closed 6 months before the election. Just because you cannot work in Lviv if you don't pay the bribes. And because the business was so corrupt, they closed everything. And my business was just developing. So people asked me to go to the election. I was not ready for that. I never thought that I would be going into election for the post of mayor in my life, and ever less thought that I will do it in Ukraine. So it was for me a surprise. And I say, I'm French, I cannot go to your election. And people say, ask the president. He gave the citizenship to a few Georgian people and American people to be minister. He can give it to you. And through my friends, Olga Bogomolets, Evgeny Utkin, I asked the president. And the president said, sure, we give you the citizenship for державный interest, which for me was very important. Well, I had to renounce my French citizenship. It was a little bit tougher, but I have to do it. And then I thought about the devise of my family, which is written on the coat of arms of my family. Стремлением к общественным пользам. Our ambition, our effort for the public good. And then people asked me more and more, and came the moment of the election. You have to be a candidate. And then I was still thinking, I said, well, it's crazy. I mean, so far I managed to have a nice life. What will happen tomorrow? I mean, I could realize that it was difficult. But people were pushing and pushing. And before the election, it happened that if I had not been a candidate, there would be only one candidate. Like 5 years before, only one candidate, always the same, always the people from Dakar. And because all the control after Maidan disappeared because of the war situation, there was even more corruption than before. So people asked me to be a candidate, and I could not refuse. Well, I signed to be a candidate. Within a week, 5 Ugolovedila criminal cases against me, and it ended up now I have 9 Ugolovedila against me. Proper judges who started to open, to make the situation difficult in a way. I could say that a lot of people from the administration were playing a very tricky role. I could see that the bloc Petro Poroshenko that was supposed to support me was the bloc Andrea Delcacha. And those 6 until today, the people from Solidarność are not voting with me because they are working under instruction of someone else and defending someone else's interest. So I could see the situation would be very difficult. But we go to the election. The city administration stops me for using all the posters, the billboard, only party of regional opposition bloc, Volia Naroda, and very strangely also Svoboda. The old auditorium, including the ones that were built by my family at the university, the Agro Institute, I couldn't use. Some repairs were going on, whatever. I couldn't meet my people. So I had to meet my people in the street. So I went to the street, to the microrayon, and I started to meet people. Very strangely, but I think it's something I want to develop now. I couldn't meet the young people, because university, everything was under control, and I couldn't meet them. But I met the babushki, because if you go to the microrayon, the babushki, and they listened. Well, I said, my speech, the European future for Ukraine, new working places, could not be very interesting for the babushki. I was expecting to be more supported by the students. But the babushki were fantastic. We have class in babushki in Lviv, and every 25th of October will be Praznik Babushka, will be our day for babushki. But my ambition was not to be like new Chernovitsky or whatever, and just to have a fan club of babushki. But they gave me the victory. They were usually very passive in the vote, but this 25th of October, they came to the vote, they brought their families, their friends, and they gave me 67% vote on the 25th of October. I was very happy. Now I was the mayor of Lviv. And I started to say, well, I don't know anything about this business. I hardly understand Ukrainian language. No, I've made some progress, but still it's difficult for me. And absolutely do not know how to run a city. What will I do? No, for people that elected me. Well, one of the descendants of the Veliki generation came back to the city, so tomorrow we have car for everybody, we have new hospital, we have new university, maybe we have an airport in Lviv, maybe we have an opera theater in Lviv, because that's the way they looked at it. And obviously my opponents pushed this, and I couldn't do any of this, obviously. And then they say, working places, tomorrow everybody's working, and the salaries will be from 1,500 hryvnia to 1,500 euros. And obviously this does not happen. And I came to the situation where, what can I do? People say, oh, the guy is European, so tomorrow all the countries will send some grants, and until now we haven't gotten any grant. So, what to do? What to do when people have such an expectation, and materially you cannot give it? I'm not a very wealthy person. For me, it's very difficult to live with the salary of the mayor. 3,700 hryvnias. and now I have a premium, it's 7,000 hryvnia, but still, I cannot live with this. So I can give a certain time of my life, but I cannot be 5 years the mayor. It's impossible. I cannot live with this amount of money. And for the people working with me, it's even worse because they make less money than I make. And how can you, at the beginning you have a lot of volunteers, all Facebook, everybody comes, we'll change the city, some people are willing to come from Santa Monica, California. I mean, let's make a big change. But how can you pay those people? You cannot work on enthusiasm very long. So, and plus I started to think, my grandfather was the mayor of the city from 1850 to 1872. But only in 1872, he built university, 2 hospitals, the church, the agro college, 3 schools. In 1850, he couldn't do anything. But people were thinking that already next month we will have new buildings. And then I say, well, on the other hand, if I were very rich, if I would receive a lot of grants, if we will transform the city in 5 minutes, what lesson will it be? It will only show that to be able to make the reform, you have to be rich, which in fact is absolutely wrong, because our intention is to demonstrate that everyone can make the reform, and you don't have to be so rich to do it. So I started to say, well, it's interesting. On one side, we have a lot of expectation. My opponents are playing with it, that I'm not delivering everything that I should deliver. And on the other side, if you want to make it a good demonstration for Ukraine, then it has to be made without money, with the will of the people. And also, we cannot import the reform. I mean, if some foreigner, with the help of volunteers from the West, make the changes, it will not work. And I started to say it's very important that the people from Lviv understand why we need to change and make them themselves. It took me 1 month to take off the monument of Lenin. Well, I could have done it the next day, but I was willing, our people, our old ladies, Soviet type, running the Židlo Komunalного Gospodarstva Nashchika. I was willing those ladies to do it, to order the people, to do it on an open working day, on the Monday, and all those people that were supporting, that were willing to keep Lenin, I was willing them to take it off. And it happened 1 month after the election. And also we had a surprise. The people, the young deputies from my coalition, well, also they were impatient. They were willing to get also Canal and the city and so and so. Only I didn't give anything, because we worked on this principle. We open concourse. If you're competent to get the job, it's not because you are politically related to whatever party. And they were a little disappointed with this. And then my opponents were always trying to bribe them and to buy them. And I lost 3 deputies of my coalition. My coalition was 19, and the opponents were 15, which is Solidarność and Volia Naroda. Still Solidarność, but I had four people majority. And there was a party who was 3 deputies. And they bought them. So I lost 3 deputies. I lost my majority. This day, the same session, unexpectedly, 3 deputies from Volia Naroda. Volia Naroda is supposed to be the former party of fractions, left the fraction Volia Naroda and came to support me. It was the director of the Pilorama, the director of Teplocity, and the director of Agro Institute. First, I was very surprised, a little shocked, almost confused. But then I said, I have to stop. Okay, 1 minute, so I finish. I said, those people, they very much they want to defend their city also. And they can make the change. So I think, just to finish it, the young generation will change Ukraine. Yes, but the young generation will change Ukraine if it teaches everyone, including the old generation, how to do it. Because the young generation in 20 years could be the old generation, or 40 years. And they will not change anything alone. You have to take the people that you have and to explain them how to make the change and why the change is needed. And believe me, 90% of Ukraine agrees and is waiting for it. So I think the example of Lukif hopefully will be successful and will be demonstrative if we can show that everyone in Ukraine is entitled and is able to make the change without too much money, without too much support, just by the own will of the people. Thank you.
We have a few minutes for questions and comments. Anybody? Yes. No,
my name is Enrico. My question would be, how do you motivate local people to go after you, to follow you with the change?
Well, you know, in a small city, not everyone is corrupt. Corruption is limited to a very small number of people. In Glukif, it was what we call the Kumovia, I mean the mayor and his Kum. But it's 10 people. The rest of the people, they saw the corruption. They witnessed when we changed the windows of the schools, they understand that if the mayor at the same moment buys a new Mercedes, there is a problem. They understand that if the children are cold in the winter because the mayor changed the windows of the school and bought very low quality, there is a problem. But still, they sign the document, they sign the paper because they don't believe it's possible not to sign. Those people are in a way passive corruption. I mean, they have taken part to the corruption. But in Glukif, if I exclude all those people, I exclude 90% of the people able to work in the administration. So you have to make them understand that they are responsible. If the director of the school says, my children are cold, if the parents call me and say, come, it's 15 degrees in the school, I cannot send my kid there, you have to explain to the director of the school that because she signed this document, guaranteeing that the change of the windows was made with the quality, that because she is responsible now, and she has now to make it right, to show the corruption, and to give us the possibility to repair this. Principally, they will agree to do it. Principally, it's the corruption, you have to show it, so people see and they understand that they have been responsible for it. You know, we live in an ocean of bureaucracy also. But people understand that they are responsible, they let this bureaucracy develop. So they are willing to make the reform, to make the change, because they understand it cannot be any longer like this. I think people are very clever, and if you show them, they understand.
Yes.
Could you tell please how to create working places and open new enterprises and revive those which were destroyed, because it's a great problem for the whole Ukraine.
I don't want to monopolize too much time, but we are at the border with Russia. Basically, if I am an investor from Switzerland, I look at the map. If I can choose between Ternopil, Zhytomyr, or Glukif, I will not choose Glukif, because 7 kilometers from Russia, our destiny is to be some kind of buffer zone. But we don't want to be a buffer zone. We want to be one of the brightest, classiest, small city in Europe where to live. So we have to also to be the vitrine, the glass window, not only of Ukraine but also of Europe. We are building the border of Europe. So we have to find some specific reason for which investor would come. I understand that Peugeot Citroën will not start a plant at the border with Russia. But 20 small companies, each one with 50 employees, could make also 1,000 new working places. So we are developing 3 fields, special fields that are very specified for our region. One is the flax and hemp, because we have the institute, we have demonstrated some good experiment, and there is world market for it. So we want to develop this. The second is the bio-production. We have a very depressed part of Ukraine, maybe the poorest part of Ukraine. But it's a chance also, because our farmer did not use so much pesticide chemicals, so we can have the bio-production. And also we have the tourism industry. We have a very, very, very beautiful city and beautiful land all around. So we want to be an attractive cluster. We have been the capital of the Cossack Empire, and we still have all those buildings. And we got lucky that the Soviet didn't hurt much. So we can make now a historical district like Williamsburg in the States or Jamestown, and tourists could come, spend one day in the former capital of Ukraine, and we could wait for them and organize festival, wait with costumes and so on and so on. So tourism, bio-production, flax and hemp. Then we can make 3,000–4,000 new working places, but it's very specific.
One more question, yes? Come back closer. Yeah. Yes.
The ambassador, Mr. Guillaume, said about direct democracy in Swiss, about like mechanism as a referendum. My question is, how you use mechanism of direct democracy in your city in Lviv? Thanks.
I want also to complement my answer to the former question. I got the statistics, how many people are working officially in Lviv. End of November, the election now, and end of April. 700 people more are working officially. I have not created 700 working places yet, but it just means that people, because we gave some pressure, people registered and started to pay officially their salaries. And that also helps to fill up the budget. The question about democracy. Well, I will give you one example. I don't want to take too much time, but for example, you talked about referendum, and we have a big question in Lviv. I have now one constructor from Sumy willing to build new microrail. No, there was no construction in Lviv for the last 20 years. So our lodging is very poor. So we need those new constructions very, very much, especially because soon comes soldiers and officers and they need some good lodging. And if we don't do it, the price of the rent will be so high that it will be a catastrophe. So we need construction. The new constructor says, okay, we built 300 new apartments in Lviv, but we have to make 10 floors houses. In Lviv, we don't have anything more than 5. We don't have any lift in the city. So it means changes. And will people like better to have towers, 10 floor high buildings in a microregion? It's not in the center, but still it could be visible. Or should we refuse it and not to give the possibilities? And the rent will go very high and the quality of lodging is very poor. I don't know the answer to this question because I also like Lviv and I like my little city, historical and so and so. So we will make a referendum. It will happen in 1 month, and we will give the question to the city. I think it's the first experiment in Ukraine. I don't know if it will work like Switzerland, but we'll try.
Yes.
Sorry, just on the last question, if I may just add something, although the question was not directed to me or Switzerland, but one Swiss example, one Ukrainian example, both positive. Recently, 2 years ago, the Swiss president was photographed by somebody on the train station. He was taking basically the train, going to work alone, without driver, without bodyguards, without assistants, without nobody. And really, it was not staged, it was real life. And it really was an international buzz because the photo went on Instagram or Twitter or I forgot, or Facebook. And it was really noticed in India, in Brazil, for instance, very strongly. Because there, for instance, you cannot be a president, not even a mayor of a rather big city, without having drivers and bodyguards. And those are costs, of course, enormous costs. But also it's part of direct democracy, meaning that being alone, without too many faces or people that prevent you to be in contact with the people. It's part of, you have direct consultation, and in Switzerland the mayors will every Saturday be, or every day basically, they will travel, walk through the city, and citizens will be able to, hey, you, Michel, I have a problem with this, and another one will come and I have a problem with that. This is also direct democracy. So the leaders, elected politicians, should not be away from the citizens. On the contrary, they should be very close to them, so accessible, so that the citizens have a possibility to address them directly with their problems. And I was in a city, I don't want to tell the city, but I was in Ukraine, and I was received by a deputy governor, and then I started, a very young person, and then I started to speak a little bit about my agenda in Ukraine and the hope I have in the youth of Ukraine. And I mentioned Golden Aviation Foundation as a very good example, and all of you as excellent examples, and that made me very believing in this country. And I saw the lady smiling and then very happy, and she told me after that she was herself a former Golden Aviation alumni. And so, you know, she understood what I meant, of course. She's one of you, basically. When I say she, because I say person in French, which is, but anyway, he or she, and then he or she told me, oh, let's go to a game tonight. There's a football game and I have tickets. I say, oh yes, great, let's go for them. And she was not in the lodge with everybody, all other officials, where you have a lot of wines and vodka and food, but she was down with the people, you know. And I think this is also a good example. I don't know if it's because of you, probably, but she was alone down there with the citizens, and I know. Probably she didn't realize even that she was not with the others, you know. It was natural for her to be with the citizens, with the normal crowd. And I think this was also exactly like the Swiss president waiting alone to take his train. This was also a good example where Ukrainian politicians can learn to be closer to the citizens.
Yes, it's very interesting. Not only that members of the Conseil Federal of this federal council, like, so let's say like the cabinet ministers, you know, go to work, some actually in a small Volkswagen, some actually by bike, and some simply walk, certainly without any guards. And secondly, actually, there was a custom, I hope it's still there, that each year this Conseil Federal, Federal Council, goes to the canton for a 2-day hike to the canton of the President of the Confederation. They go to different villages set up with no guards. No guards. Just compare that to our President coming to Kiev or going out with police cars and so many security cars behind them, and the whole street being kind of banned for traffic, etc. So it's again, yes, direct democracy is also mean that people are not afraid. These people are not afraid. I think it's wonderful. I was mentioning in my book when I wanted to meet the president of the Swiss Confederation and ask my friend to thank him for our institute in Geneva functioning for 25 years so nicely without any problems. So I asked my Swiss friend, deputy director, now how do I do it? He says, well, how do you write the letter to the president? Just like that. So I wrote to the president. 3 days later, my secretary runs my office, very excited. The secretary of President Trudy, who was at that time, remember, the socialist from Basel, the secretary of President of the Confederation is asking if next Wednesday at 15 hours will be fine for you. I said, yes, of course. And then I arrived in Bern, having back first to look, right to help his office of the president. So I was pointed to the building. I go, there was some gate, but the gate was open. There was a policeman, but actually with no firearms. And I asked him, well, I had a meeting with President Trudy. He said, well, he's on the 3rd floor. So I go up to the 3rd floor. And there was nobody on the 3rd floor. But actually one man was working by, but nobody checking. And he says, well, I had a meeting with President Trudy. What should I do? Well, he's in number 321, so you just open the door. And I went and I knocked on the door, and it was not even his secretary, it was his door. He just came and opened the door. Now that's, you see, what direct democracy also means. You know, that people are so close, they're not that part of the people. They're not a part of the people. So, anyway, but you made Switzerland sound so interesting, so exciting. I'm afraid you might have a lot of these teams coming to Switzerland to explore. And I wanted to thank you very much. And Michel, you don't have to pay the football, because last night the Ukrainian national team won 3-1 against Albania, which was after this also victory against Romania. So the Ukrainian national team is now 19th actually in the world ranking of teams. So God, you don't have to feel obliged to play any football. You have to do it work. Thank you very much. And